For our next session, Sonali's Book Club, with Sonali Bendre Behl in conversation with Meru Gokhale. This session is proudly presented by UFO Movies. Sonali Bendre Behl is an award-winning Indian film actress, TV personality, and author of the Modern Gurukul, My Experiments with Parenting. In 2017, she started a digital book club called Sonali's Book Club, an inspirational space to interact with book lovers from around the globe. To discuss her book club and what reading means to her, she appears in conversation today with Meru Gokhale, Editor-in-Chief of Literary Publishing at Penguin Random House in India. Please join me in giving a very, very warm welcome. Sonali Bendre Behl and Meru Gokhale, presented by UFO Movies.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear us? Okay, so I'm told there's going to be a video which is going to be played first. Can the technical team please play that? And I don't think Sonali's mic is working. I'll just give her the mic. Hang on.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. Some new faces, some who have... You think everybody has sat through the last session also? No, there are a lot of new faces. Great, that's good to see. So yes, we are here to start a session, and I'm looking forward to an interesting chat with you, Meru.
Thank you, Sonali. Are we doing the video? Okay, we're going to start with the video.
Hello. About reading a book was when you had like-minded friends and you could discuss it. This time at SBC, we are reading two books. Talk about characterization.
They do usually in the modern classes what they take. They will ask you to know the character to the core.
The idea was to speak about plot. The story by itself is not that important. What is more important is the philosophies that you convey. The story is just supposed to be a nice, attractive, page-turning wrapper around it.
I'm so excited because, after all these lineup of authors, it's the first time that I have a woman author with me.
In the company of Neha, who's a really young and successful author already. And she wrote this book when she was 15, which is pretty amazing.
The truly beautiful way of giving back is not just handing something over, but if we could inculcate a habit of reading. Once you have the habit of reading, that these kids can take with them for life.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks again, Sonali, for being here. So I am going to start at the beginning. I want to ask you, what inspired you to start your own book club? And when did you start it? Tell us a little bit about how you did that. And before I ask her anything else, do you have a working mic? I think I'll just give it back to her again. We can share one.
Yeah, of course. It's a long story, and I know I've told this before, but it's an interesting one, I think. As an actor who would who has really not done a movie for a really long time, I thought, I didn't need to do this social media thing, so to say. But there were a lot of fake accounts going around with and they looked really real. There were times when I would get shocked by what they were putting out. So, my team was like, listen, we need to have an actual account. That blue tick, I believe, counts for things. And so we can't keep correcting the fake accounts. We need our own account. So we said, okay, let's get onto the social media. And I was very hesitant about it. When I got onto it and I realized that it's an amazing place to be on. It was so alive and there were so many opinions. And I could get in touch with people directly. And, it was not somebody, however great an interviewer can. But
I
there's
haven't
always
even started yet.
Yeah, but when they write about you, there's their version of it. Here it was undiluted me. So it was amazing and I really enjoyed it. And I thought that this is, I came to it late, but I discovered the amazing part, the reach of social media. And then as it grew, it was more about part of my profession, about what you wear, what's your lipstick, what's the earring. I said, but this is tedious. I mean, how long can I keep doing that? I'm not really interested in it. It's part of my profession. I do it, but this is not me. And then I said, why not use it to do something which I've been promising myself. Since I gave birth to my child, and a lot of new mothers will understand, it becomes very difficult to read because the moment you read 10 pages, the child wakes up, needs something, so then you're going back to after like the next day you actually pick it up again and you're going back to the 10 pages. Basically, you just stop reading as much. So I said, I've given up this habit and I really want to get back into reading. And what better way to do it than to have a book club? Now, normally when you have a book club and a few friends get together, it's great that you can discuss the books. That's the beauty of it. But I live in Mumbai. It's difficult to get from one end to another. The traffic is crazy. So nobody is free to spend that kind of time. So you end up not doing it. And it becomes more about the tea and what is being served rather than about the books. So online was a great opportunity for me to take it, grasp it, and use it, form a book club. Now I had to put out a book, read it, and have a discussion. So it gave me a discipline where I needed to read the book, and it just was a tool to basically get back into the habit of reading and to form a community where we could discuss it.
That's wonderful. And for those of you here in the audience who are not already members of Sonali's book club, can you tell us how does one become a member? Tell us what happens. How do we participate?
Oops.
I've just become a member a few weeks ago.
I'm technologically challenged. This is always, I hope I get it right, but you go onto the Facebook page and put in the request. Yeah? Sonali's book club, it's called.
Wonderful.
Oh, I'm so bad at this.
No, what's really nice about this is how most of what we read about social media, it's all about the negative stuff you find there, all the awful things that you encounter there. But it's really wonderful to see somebody who is carving out a positive space within social media so people can actually have positive interactions about opinions, different views, and I think that's something everybody will acknowledge and give a round of applause to.
Thank you. But Meru, I really feel that every great tool or thing always has another side to it, and it's how you use it. Nothing is good or bad, it's how we use it. And am I going to get pulled down because everybody is shouting out an opinion all the time, and everybody has it and they just want to announce it, which is great, but that's not me. And I don't think I need to announce my opinions and shout them out from rooftops. My personality is different. And I think we can do it subtly also. And what you read, what you put out, also gives a hint of what your opinions are and what your personality is. And I think that's good enough. Everything doesn't have to be so out there, and we don't have to be screaming and shouting, and it can be calmer also, is where I come from, basically. So that makes me comfortable.
And how do you decide in your book club what you're going to read next? How do you choose? And if there are aspiring authors out here who might want them to send you books for your book club, what's your selection process?
Well, it's called Sonali's book club, so I get to choose. And I really hold on to that fact. So whatever I feel like reading, I try and do that. In fact, I do feel at times that I could and I would like to cover more genres. So I have an idea how to go about it. And I hope in the coming months I will put it out and it'll take shape and I will be able to put it out because it just grew from a little community which was reading books together and discussing it. And as we saw in the video, it's taken on a life of its own and we're doing so many other things and it all happened organically. I remember talking to Ravi Subramaniam at one point and he said, if we could do that and this idea would be so lovely. And I said, why don't you, I wish you could share this with the budding authors. And from there, the idea of a masterclass was born. And I got them to, talk to, because a lot of readers, I find, are always, oh, thank you.
There's only one cup, I noticed.
Thank you. That's it. Really.
Anybody wants to answer why that might be?
Thank you
I'm
so
just
much.
kidding.
Thank you.
No, it's fine. I'm fine being neglected. Yeah.
I can share. You did share your mic with me, so I could share my coffee with you.
Okay, no, just kidding. Now, moving on to some of the books which you have in your book club, which I'm going to ask you about next. But I want to talk about something which you just mentioned, which is a masterclass. Now, from all of the years that I've come to Jaipur, one of the things I love most is meeting budding authors, because I know there's lots of people who've written books. They're often very shy and they don't know how to go about the next steps. Now, your masterclass sounds really interesting. How many of you in the audience are secret, not so secret authors? You want to raise your hand? I know there's more. There has to be.
Come on, don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your masterclass. What can a budding author learn from it? Is it for fiction? Is it for non-fiction?
So I think all kinds. And in fact, I want to get in more and more of the masterclass, various authors in, because everybody has a different technique. And I always feel that there cannot be one particular formula to writing. Or you have online courses and stuff like that. But a lot of authors say that didn't help them. They worked about it differently. And I just feel if you hear a lot of people, you could maybe take a point from one author, another point from another, and from a whole new technique of your own, write a book and come and do a masterclass with us. So it's about picking up and figuring out what works the best for you. And I think that was the idea behind getting as many authors as you can to come and do a masterclass so that you can pick and choose and figure out what you're comfortable with.
Tell us a little bit about the books which have featured in your book club, because the most wonderful thing about a book club, I think, is sort of what you said earlier, that reading is such a wonderfully, is a solitary activity, and you can spend hours on your own, undisturbed, completely lost in another world, and then you have the joy of discussing it with other people. So what I noticed in your video, one of the books you talked about is a book called Educated by Tara Westover. And immediately, as soon as I met Sonali, we've never met each other before. We just met each other 20 minutes ago, and we already had something in common. We were talking about this book that we both loved. I'm going to let Sonali tell you a little bit about that book and why she chose it for her book club.
Well, when I said it's Sonali's book club and I choose it, I must say that there are times when my community does give a lot of suggestions, and I do listen to it, and I love the suggestions that come. This was a book that it was, actually, if you look at the book, it's not like a very fancy cover or anything. It was this little book in the shelf in the bookstore, and I don't know what drew me to it, and I picked it up. And the moment I read the back, and I was just blown, and I said, I need to read this book. And when I read it, every book teaches you something, and this was one of those books. First of all, I couldn't believe that this was a debutante author. She was writing for the first time. It was so well written, and it was so heartfelt. And the fact that the struggle that she had to go through to educate herself, and the whole thing about what exactly is educated. Are we really educated because we have formal education? Or is it when you don't have formal education? Or is it a mix of, there's so many questions. And I think the best book is which brings out all these questions, where you ask more questions and raises more questions in your mind than gives you the answers. And that's what I think this book did. What did you like about the book?
Well, Educated is about a young woman in the US. She comes from a very rural community and a very orthodox background. And she's the first girl in her family, or almost the first person in her family to get a formal education. Her entire family is against it, and she has to fight them in order to get them. She now teaches in Cambridge, I believe. It's honestly one of the most powerful books that I've ever read, because she's pursuing a passion for which she has to go against all of the people who she loves.
And also a big point in that was that she does clear all the so-called exams and tests to get into the university.
Look, they heard
by
somebody
studying
heard me.
herself. By studying herself and not going through the regular classes and everything. That was her passion for education. That was a passion for knowledge. And that's how she got through to those and got the scholarships. And actually it came to a point where it was, does she stick to the religious beliefs or it was like breaking away from family. So you feel for the family where she doesn't want to let go of the family, and yet the quest for knowledge is kind of drawing her away from it. It was so powerful.
It's really, really heartbreaking. Another book which you talk about in your book club is a lovely novel called A Gentleman in Moscow.
Oh my God.
So you want to tell the audience a little bit about that book and why you chose it?
It's so beautiful. It was suggested by a friend, and I was in New York for my treatment when I chose that book. And, I just got so much strength from that book. I mean, this person, he's literally under house arrest in Moscow in this hotel. And he spends about 20 years there or something. Yeah. And it just gave me strength to realize that how he does it with a smile on his face. He's been the royalty over there, has had the world at his feet, and now he's literally under house arrest in this one room, literally like an attic room in this hotel. And how he makes that his world, and he makes a life out of that, and makes another child's life out of it. And for me, with what I was going through at that time, it was just such a huge lesson that it's not about how can you make whatever that you're going through, how can you go through it with a smile, and how can you make the most of it, and how can you kind of give back with it? And that's what that book gave me. Thank you.
I think what Sonali is saying is an extremely powerful message, because one of the things which really comes through is how at different phases in your life, such as this one, which all of us here can only try and empathize what a difficult phase of your life it must have been. It's wonderful to know that books were there to give you solace, books were your friend. And then you've talked about books that you tried to read and couldn't quite read while you just become a mother. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how it feels at different phases of your life to read, and do your reading taste change at different points in your life?
Yes, they do. I would also like to add that not just the books, but this community of book club also saw me through this really tough time in my life, because it can sound very silly, but there are times when just to put the book out and choose the book and say, you know what, get out of the bed, you've not put a book out, and say that, listen, guys, this is the picture, put the lipstick on, put on the kajal and say, this is the picture, smile on your face and say, let's start reading it. It just gave me a purpose. And then, the book has been out, let's discuss it. It just gave me a purpose to, not just be lying in that bed, but get out of it and get on with life. So I think this community of my book club did see me through that. Our tastes do change. During this phase, while A Gentleman in Moscow was an amazing, it was an uplifting book for me. The next book was a very beautiful book. I think it was called A Young Life, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is one of the
first. A Little Life, I think.
A Little Life.
Yes.
I could not complete that book. It was sad, and it just pulled, and I started going low, and I said, this is not the time of life where I can afford to go low and lose the confidence, and I could not complete it. And I think I remember apologizing and saying, guys, I'm really sorry, I can't complete this book. And I got, my community members wrote back to me saying that, why are you reading books like this? You should not be reading these books. And then they gave me suggestions of the books that I should be reading. And they said, you will pull yourself down. This is not the book for this time. Let's pick it up some other time. So it was wonderful. But, sometimes what happens is when you kind of start judging yourself when you don't complete a book. But I'm reaching a stage where I say that, you know what? I'm a book lover, but doesn't mean I'm going to like all the books. And it doesn't, I think I'm judging myself if I'm not finishing, but it's okay to not like some book. and to like some other book. And we are all going to go through phases where we feel like reading something, and sometimes we just want to pick up that fantasy fiction and go into a fantasy world and not really have to think about too many things. And it's okay to do that.
I think what you said is so important, because I don't know how many of you feel, but there is sometimes quite a bit of guilt attached to reading, that if you start a book, then you have to finish it, or there's some kind of virtue attached to reading. But sometimes we forget that reading is just for joy. And I'm glad you've said that one of the takeaways today is that it's perfectly okay to pick up a book and just leave it if you're not in the mood to go further, and pick it up some other time, or not pick it up some other time.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. We do. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Now, I'm going to soon open this the stage up to the audience for questions. So please do have your questions ready, because while we'll continue our conversation, we're quite keen to involve you in it as well. So do prepare them. But I do have a couple of more questions before we open it up. Because I want to ask you, how did you first get hooked onto reading yourself? Because one of the things people struggle with is how to make your children interested in reading, how to get that habit to be something that you actually enjoy instead of being a chore. And looking at you, you clearly love it and you enjoy it. So how did that happen?
Well, I think it was easier for our parents. It's more difficult for us, because this generation, it's very difficult to get them interested in books, because there's just so much of stimulus around. And things are moving so fast that we had that kind of time. My father worked in the central government services, so every 2 years we were in a new place, traveled the length and breadth of the country. So you were constantly moving to new schools, and I didn't really have that many friends then, you're kind of finding yourself. So books were my friends. Other than my sisters, it was books. So we were used to spending our time with ourselves. And I think when I came here and I got into this profession, none of my family, I'm from nowhere even remotely connected with movies. And so from a very middle-class Maharashtrian upbringing, I came into this world which was complete. It was like being on another planet. And I think, again, in this world where it was very easy to feel the peer pressure to do certain things or not do certain things or to look a certain way, I think books kept me grounded, because what I had learned, because my friends were books, what I had learned was that it didn't matter if I didn't have anybody. It was okay to be alone with a book. You don't need to have a lot of people liking you all the time. It's okay to have just 2 people liking you. You don't have to be so popular all the time. And I think I could get that courage because I was happy to retreat into my book.
It's lovely to hear books being a friend at another phase of your life. But if I may ask you a non-book related question, how did you get into films? How was that? That's interesting that you say that, because I know we're talking about the book club, but it sounds fascinating from a completely different background, to break into such a difficult industry. How did that happen? And what drew you to it in the first place?
Well, we had moved to Mumbai, and somebody saw me somewhere and they kind of offered a job, and I was like, I don't want to do it. But yes, pocket money was not something that was, I needed to make my money. I was always doing summer jobs because, how do I put it without sounding, my father was an honest government official, so it was very hard, and that was the reason why we moved so much. As I grew up, I realized that because it was frustrating for us that we were constantly on the move, but I realized that he couldn't last anywhere because he was the spoke in the wheels, basically. So that was one of the reasons. And so, of course, till 12th, your education for a girl was free, but after that, the education you would have to. So I educated myself in that sense, because my father couldn't afford to send me to college at that point of time. So I was looking for various jobs, and this is what would come. There was some fashion show happening somewhere, somebody broke their leg, and they said, could you do it? I said, I don't know what to do. They said, just walk. I walked, and then the offers started coming in. That was also the period where the advertising was moving into storytelling. It was not just about standing a certain way, but little stories they were starting to tell. So suddenly, they were looking, the regular models who were there didn't fit that bill, and suddenly an avenue opened out. So I was just there at the right place at the right time, and I got that opportunity. And then it came to a point where I told my father, when I looked at it, I said, you know what, I know I want to study and I understand what you're saying. I'll give those IAS exams and everything, but can I just give a little bit of time? I'm so young, I have the time, and I can apply for it later. Give me 3 years, let me try this out, because I knew that no other field could I make the money that I made in this field as quickly as I did. So basically I got into it because it was great money.
I think it's one of the things this audience and I would like to appreciate is how, with open arms, you have embraced every single phase of your life, up, down, difficult, whatever it is. It's wonderful to see somebody who can embrace everything with such an open heart. And with that, I want to open it up to the audience. So who would like to go first? And can we please keep it to a question and not a statement if possible? But if you have a burning desire to make a statement, then it should be worth it. What's your name? Please introduce yourself.
Hello.
You
My name is Pranjal, and I'm a fan of yours.
Thank you.
Yeah. Usually, what happens is that when people get suffering in life, they suffer a lot, like your case. So they turn towards spirituality and religion, and they get into reading all the Bhagavad Gita. And so, was it the case with you as well? You read religious and spiritual books because you are a book lover, or did you get into that zone?
Well, even when I had my baby and when I was looking at parenting tips, and that was the reason why I wrote that book on parenting, I found what would you say, inspiration in things like, which were not really in other parenting books. I really found them in life. I found them in people that I met. I found them in articles that I read, or so I feel that a lot of times, what comes to you? Like when I talk about A Gentleman in Moscow, I think it taught me a lot while giving me the entertainment. And other thing was that, am I really a very religious person? Then I needed to be very true to myself. And we do a lot of things because you're brought up a certain way and that's the norm and you follow it. But also when you're so close to death, there's a certain amount of clarity that comes in. And I really wanted to be truthful. And I wanted to know that, do I really firmly believe in it so much that I'm ready to give my life over to it? And the answer was no. And I hope I don't get flack for it, but that is the reality, that the answer was no. And that's why I didn't go into that. And I always said, let me get through this period in the best way that I can understand doing it. And now I do read up on it. And when you mentioned a Bhagavad Gita and all, when you're brought up in the household that you're brought up, these are all part of your life. It's not something like you need to sit down and read it. It's been part of your life. It's been going on. You've heard it as a child and everything. So it's in you. And now when I'm in a phase where I'm recovering really well, touch wood, that at that point of time, what I realize is that when I read up on things, I realize that what I was using and what I was doing was something that they are all talking about. They're given various names. You call it joyfulness, you call it mindfulness, you call it visualization, you call it meditation. But what happened at that point of time was that my body was definitely telling me something. Body, mind, whatever it is inside you. So what I'm basically trying to say is that all of us, I'm not special, all of us get that. We have it inside us. We just need to listen to us. Probably what happened to me was I was so close to that. The clarity was so much there that I was just listening to myself and cutting the noise out. And that's when whatever was inside me, the knowledge was there inside me. I needed to tap into it. Oof. Does it make any sense?
It does. It does.
I don't know if I can.
Okay, who wants to go next? There's a lady over here.
Good evening, Sonali ma'am. I'm your big fan and I follow your handle and I'm also a part of your Instagram account. I have brought
What's your name?
My name is Dr. Starry John. I come from Ahmedabad. And inspired by Sonali ma'am, I've started my own book club too in Ahmedabad along with Dr. Sameer. Ma'am, I wanted to ask you one suggestion that you would give. There are times wherein we engage our members in reading. But sometimes we find that there are no members turning around for the book club when when we do a particular reading. So, ma'am, what do you suggest in such cases?
Well, if you have a book club and if you have read it and you want to discuss it, and at that time if somebody doesn't have the time, you could maybe put it out as a discussion, and at some other point somebody can just catch up on it and read up on it.
Okay.
And it can be just you and somebody else, and it doesn't need to be a really big group also.
So, ma'am, how do you think that we can inspire people to read books and actually bring them to the book club and have them reading?
So I'm sure if you've started it, it will grow. It's slow. Books are not something that it's a fight for books. Let's be honest in today's day and age. But I think with SBC Little Ones, what we did was we started an activity which was very, very interesting. What we are trying to do, there's a beautiful NGO called Angel Express in Mumbai. What they do is for the first generation learners, they basically in municipal gardens and areas, you donate your time where you teach these children English, maths, because when they can speak in English, it opens out a lot of different doors for them. So for this kind of a community, what we did was we gave them what we call the Sonali's bookshelf. It was like a little mini library. So what we have stocked it up with books, and when we went there, we did the reading with them. And what we are trying to do is inculcate a habit of reading. So what I got the children to promise that they will read 15 minutes before they go to sleep. They come from hard families. There are a lot of issues. And I always felt that getting into a book gave you an opening into a fantasy world, or sometimes into a world which you don't necessarily have to get onto a plane or train and travel. You can travel through that book, and it teaches you so much about the world. So it just opens your mind up, and it teaches you to dream. And I think every child should have that. So maybe you should start things like that, and that will make it grow. But yes, if you're going to expect it to grow as fast as something on like a visual medium will grow at this point of time, it's not going to grow that fast.
Thank you, ma'am.
There's a lady at the back over there. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Chahat Katpal. Ma'am, my question to you is that I've just finished writing my first book. So how should I go about marketing it? My book is it is a poetry book titled Pen, Paper and Poetess. So it's available worldwide. But now my question is, how exactly should I market it so that more and more people are aware of it?
Meru, I'm going to ask you to help me with this, because you'll be able to guide her much better than I will be able to.
So I think that one of the first things that you should do is look up other people who write poetry online. See, what are the other online poetry forums which are there. Try and get your poems published on a few of those websites, write to them, and once you've got your poems in a nice selection of different places, then of course you can approach a publisher or something like that. But definitely try and interact with other people who are writing poetry like yours. Reach out to them. It's usually quite a friendly space. Because the first thing after you've written a book, and I'm sure many of you will agree, is that you want people to read it. You want to share it. So don't be shy about sharing it, because it can be quite a frightening experience. But just embrace that fear and just do it.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Durva Sharma. And thank you for a wonderful session out here. The day's start, I've attended both your sessions. My question to you is that during the days when you were struggling with cancer, what kept you going? Willpower, I understand that. You have shown that grit. I've followed you all through your days. I lost my sister to cancer. This was 13 years back. Back then, science had not developed this much. Today it has. But what kept you going, and what message you have for other people who are struggling with cancer right now?
So for me, when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was a shock. And when I put it out on my handle, it was because I was in the middle of doing a show at that point. And obviously I was going to disappear and somebody else was going to take over. And I had a great relationship with the people I was working with, and I did not want any sort of negativity and gossip around it as to why was I not doing it. Things are not going to remain hidden, and I didn't want speculation around it. I just wanted to say what it was, put that one post out and tell them that this is what is happening, this is what I'm dealing with now. So, you know what, see you all later, basically, that's what it was. But the kind of response I got on that post was so shocking that I was clueless. I did not realize that there were so many people and it was so rampant, if that's the word I can use. And I was like, when I read all those comments, and the people who had written to us from all stratas of society, from cities, villages, everywhere. So there was nothing in particular that you could say, oh, this is the lot. That age group wise, there were all sorts of generations that were going through it. So there was nothing that you could pinpoint, and you suddenly realize that, my God, this is like an epidemic, literally. And I had no clue about it. And also I realized that I was really not so special. This was not just happening to me. There are a lot of people going through it. And I'm in fact lucky that I can actually, I have a husband who has taken charge and said that we are getting out of, we are doing this and this is what we are going to figure out, because, that was also needed. And there are a lot of people who were not sharing this with their near and dear ones and fighting it out alone because there was a stigma attached to it. And that just broke my heart, because I felt I could survive it because of the family and the friends and the love that I got. But if I did not share it, how would people know that I was going through it and give me that love? So my heart really broke for the people who were not sharing about it. And that's when I started putting things out further then. Just because I just wanted people to understand that you should be talking about it, and that let's talk about it, because you're only going to go lower and it's only going to pull you down and you're going to go into depression, which is not going to help your healing. Also, the other thing was, I'm sorry, that part of my life is a bit difficult. I'm sorry you lost your sister. But also the other thing was that early detection does save lives, and more we talk about it and we tell our families, and the more we get tested, it's going to save lives. So I hope you also pass on that message.
Sonali, thank you for sharing that experience, because I think what you say is absolutely right. I think that whenever people are in distress, sometimes we're afraid of reaching out. But when you do, one of the beautiful things about life is that 99% of the people you meet are wonderful. They want to help you. Then there's a lot of positivity and goodwill out there, even in very difficult situations. And watching you it's lovely to see that as a very inspiring example. Who would like to go next?
My question is, Sonali, I'm Prakash Bhandari, I'm a journalist. Not much is known about the intellectual capacity of Bollywood stars. And
I mean, I wouldn't say nothing.
not much is it?
Okay, not much.
I don't think it's a secret also. And my question is, since you were bred in, since your childhood you've been reading books, and you've loved it and you still love it, how has this reading habits has improved your intellectual capacity, which eventually was reflected in your acting?
First of all, I would say that not much is known about Bollywood actors, as you say, and their intellectual capacity, is also because nobody really wants to know about their intellectual capacity. And that's not entertaining enough. And it's not gossipy enough. And so I always read. I carried my books on my sets and I was reading there also. So I have nothing against when I say journalists, but there were journalists coming on the sets. They were watching me read it, sharing books with me, talking to me about books. But when they wrote about me or did my articles, they were not interested in putting that side of me out there, because that wouldn't make for great headlines or sensational headlines. It was more interesting to know who was I having an affair with or not having an affair with, or what was happening, or was I having a fight with someone. So that was one of the reasons, and that's what I mean when I say social media gave me the platform where people got to know who I was without that filter. And suddenly now it's not something that is new, but it's just something that I've been able to put out, and people have been able to see that a lot more. I'm not a trained actor, and I say that with a lot of regret, because like I said, I came to this field wanting to make the money, and I fell in love with the job I was doing. Unfortunately, because I came in not prepared, by the time I started getting very, like enjoying the job and getting good at what you do, it's a 10,000 hour rule. I hadn't put in those 10,000 hours and I was not prepared for it. A certain amount of time had lapsed. But it was just the most wonderful place to be mentally, creatively, and I found myself over there. I found friends and family over there, and I think I owe a lot to Bollywood. I really think it was one of the most wonderful things that happened to me.
Can I interrupt and ask you a question about that? So if you had to read a memoir by one Bollywood star, who would that be? Which hasn't been a frank, candid memoir. Whose memoir would you like to read?
Oh my God.
I finally asked a difficult question.
I'm going to say pass on that.
Okay, fine. Okay, I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. We have time for about 2 more questions. Yes. Who's going next? Okay, there's a lady over here.
Hi, my name is Seema Punvani, and first of all, thank you for starting a book club because I think the world needs more readers.
Oh, thank you.
But I do want to ask you a question about your writing. So I'm a writer myself, and I was informed very, very clearly by my teenage son that never, ever, ever write anything about me, a character that's even close to me, and if you do, I'll never talk to you for the rest of your life. So I know your book, there's a lot of personal anecdotes. So how do you balance what you're writing compared to if there's causing any friction in the family, or will they like it, not like it? How do you balance that?
Well, I did give it to my husband, and I asked him if it was okay for him because he was such a huge part of it. My son was too young at that point of time, and I remember discussing this and saying that he's probably going to grow up and going to hate me for having put all those things in it. But at that point, when I was writing that book, and motherhood was the biggest thing that had happened to me. And again, I felt that when you write about parenting, it is just so personal. And a lot of people tell you, oh, it should be done like this, and it should not be done like that. And you realize that a lot of times there are no rules, and you realize that nobody can really tell you what is to be done. It's a gut, and you need to figure it out. So what I did with the book was I tried to put in incidents so that I could say what was my process, how did I arrive to this conclusion? Because you might not come to the same conclusion, but you might understand that, it is okay to not see eye to eye with the world-renowned psychiatrist and the world-renowned child specialist, and you might have a different idea about it. It's okay to do that. And the idea was to put that out, that you can find your own path, and this is what I have done. So my son is now a teenager. The clip that you saw when I was in New York, he did take up some jobs for me, and he did go and do a book session, and he actually read that book eventually. So I was so happy that he could do it, because I find it very difficult to get him to read. But he's also a teenager where he says that you can't put a picture of mine without approval. I'm not going to do this. I did it. I don't know why I did it, but now I'm not going to do it. So I think it's a teen thing. I'm getting in there now.
And now we have one final question. Who is it going to be? It has to be the guy who stood up. Yeah. What's your name, sir?
Yeah, hi. I'm Siv, actually, an evolving writer and a big fan of Sonali for her grace, charm, the composure.
Let's give her a big hand for all of these things.
Thank you.
I held myself, actually, and I gave a chance to my friend who wanted to ask a question. Now I'm lucky, actually, because both of you made me stand up. Yeah, thank you. The question is, Sonali, a bit sensitive, actually. Feel free, and if you think it's kind of okay, please answer that. Even now, in this era of modern technology and advancements and so much of progress, still people from a lot of families look down upon acting for girls and females down as a profession. So I'm sure a lot of females, girls or whatever, they would like to become actors. They would get into the film industry, in general. So what's your take on this from your personal experience? Be bold enough and frank, actually, because I'm sure this is going to help a lot of people, actually. I'm speaking on all of their behalf. So what would be your pieces of advice, tips, whatever precautions, what would you say on this?
Can I ask you a sensitive question?
Yeah, please.
How old are you?
I'm 50.
So please don't mind me saying this. My favorite
Yeah.
I don't mind. But
Yeah.
I think today's generation is very different from where, you and me kind of came from. When I came in from an educated background in that sense. And more girls who are in there are coming from very good families, educated families. In fact, they're taking this up as their education, preparing themselves and come in. I mean, if you look at the kids who come in today, they're so prepared. If I came in today the way I came in, if I was a producer, I wouldn't give myself a job. I was so unprepared. But they come in so prepared now that it's fantastic. So I think today's generation, I don't know if this question is still applicable to them because they're such go-getters. They are exposed to so much more. And I think they have an amazing attitude towards life. And I really want to learn from them, actually. Thank you.
I'm being told we do have a little bit more time, so I'm actually going to ask you a question which I wasn't because I thought we didn't have enough time. If you could have one person on your book club, like anybody on earth, who would that person be and why?
Hi, how are you? Sorry. I would say that would be my son because getting that generation to get to reading and join a book club, I think would be a greater achievement than anything else today. So yes, I would say my son.
I thought you would be the final person, but looks like there are second chances in life. So you've already asked.
There are.
Have you already asked a question? No, okay.
There are a lot of Hi, I am Vaidehi. There are
What's your name?
Vaidehi. There are a lot of book adaptations happening in Hollywood and other movie industries. So there are not as much happening in Bollywood. So if there is a movie adaptation of a book, would you like to act in it? And do you have any preferences and like in which character or which book you would like to be?
So I don't have any preferences at this point, but there are a lot more books being adapted. And not just in movies, but you have the web series and huge amount of content platforms that have opened out. And I think it's really like the time for content and for authors. And literally before you write now, rights are being sold. So authors are really having a good time, I feel now. And everybody is looking for a good story and good things to be done. There are a lot of adaptations that are actually happening in Bollywood. Also, where the book club is concerned, I wanted to add to that. There are a lot of things where movie adaptations and all that on-ground activities we've been doing with it. And in fact, I'm looking forward to in the coming months to getting directors, and on what kind of books they would like to adapt, or directors who have adapted books and what was their feeling. Getting that into the offline book club activity, as we call it, to get them and have conversations with them so that we can get more ideas about what is actually going on today.
I'm not going to let her off that easily, actually. So come on, tell us, which fictional character would you like to play on screen? Could be from any book.
At this point of time, I can't think. Oh my God. Rules of Civility.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, who's next? And I want to ask you one more thing. One topic we haven't covered is children's books. What's your favorite children's book?
Children's book takes me back to Chanda Mama, Champak, Tintin. Love them.
Favorites, yeah.
Love them. And then, of course, we've all been through the Enid Blytons.
Yes.
And the magic starts from there. So a lot of them. I discovered some more children's books when I became a mother. And there was a book that I got for my son, which I love. It was called Wabi Sabi. And it was it had beautiful illustrations. It was a Japanese writer book. So, you had that haiku beautifully done. And just trying to explain to my son what Wabi Sabi meant. It was basically, Wabi Sabi was that warm earthen cooler tea cup in winter day, as opposed to a shiny ceramic cup. The warmth that you get from holding something like that, and something that comes from within. The beauty from within is what Wabi Sabi means in Japanese. And it was so difficult to explain that to a little child, and I have tried, and I hope I have managed to pass the wabi-sabi lesson on. But that book was a very, very beautiful book for me.
I think we all need a little wabi-sabi in our lives, so I think everybody will agree with that. Lady over there. Are you the friend of... No, okay. Just because everybody around there seems to stand up for the questions.
Yeah.
Is there a mic over there? All the mics seem to have vanished.
Oh. Hi, Sonali.
Hi.
Well, it's not a question. It's just a suggestion about your book club. Being a dyslexia therapist, and my profession is to teach children how to read, I would just request you to keep all your books dyslexia friendly.
That's a
Thank
really
you.
good
That's
suggestion.
a
Thank
really
you.
good suggestion.
You know,
And keep it really simple words, because children like to read, but because of their learning disabilities, they may pick up the book because the cover is interesting and because of peer pressure, but sometimes that's all they can do. Once they start opening the book and reading the words and it's all jumbled up, they don't want to read it anymore. So I always feel that if I can raise this and request people who write, if they can just use simple words, very, very simple words for all the kind of children with all the kind of abilities and not disabilities. Thank you.
That's a wonderful suggestion, and we will definitely, that's something.
And it's a wonderful suggestion also because, you know, one of the things we were talking about backstage was when you were recovering and going through your cancer treatment, you said that there was a time when you turned to audiobooks. Yeah. And there are times in your life which are very difficult times like this, or there are simpler times you could just be driving to work every day and having a long commute, when an audiobook can be a surprisingly good friend. So what are the audiobooks you listen to, and what do you want to tell the audience a little bit about
I still
what they
feel
like?
guilty about that, but I did go over to the dark side. I am a fan now of audiobooks also, because when I was going through my keyboard, the eyesight and the hearing and everything was a mess, and it was in between, and I couldn't kind of figure out what was happening. And every time you tried to read, and when it was moving, there was a lot of motion sickness, so I could not really read at that point of time. So listening did help, and that also was another thing that I did with my son, because the attention span is going to be, I'm just competing with too many things. And so actually kind of getting him interested in some really good audiobooks, basically it's about getting those ideas in his head, and that was what was happening. And so I do recommend that. So maybe that could also be an interesting way to teach children with dyslexia, maybe? Absolutely. Yeah?
Yes. Gentleman over here. Oh, sorry, there's someone at the back first who's already got the mic.
Hello, ma'am. Hi. My question to you is, talking about adaptations, if you were to pick one director from Bollywood, except Vishal Bhardwaj, because we all know he's a master at adaptations, as we have seen in the likes of Omkara, Haider, and Pataka. If you were to pick one director out of, let's say, Anurag Kashyap, Vikramaditya Motwane, Neeraj Ghewan, Ritesh Batra, Shujit Sarkar, who would you pick for adapting a book into a movie, and why? Thank you.
You've named some really wonderful directors, but I think it would be, because of the book that I named, it would be interesting to see a Zoya Akhtar do it, maybe. Yeah, that's a you know, and I would love to see a Farah also do a really interesting adaptation of a fun book, because I do feel that these girls are getting some interesting insight into what has been a very male-dominated place in life. So yeah.
Okay, who's next? We'll ask one final question, and then I'm going to ask Sonali to share her advice with the audience about what she feels is the best way to sort of enjoy your life's journey with books, so to speak. What's the best way to sort of experience it without it being a chore, and how to sort of let things sort of flow in the wonderful way that only she seems to be able to?
So a couple of things that I stopped feeling guilty about not completing a book was one of the big things, because if something is not holding my attention, move on to the next one. Also, what is happening is that I'm also turning to be, we are all so stimulated now. We have so many things to watch, so many things to do, and there's not any moment of time where we feel that, oh, what do I do now? I'm just sitting doing nothing. I mean, there are times when we long for that time where we say that I wish I could just sit and not do anything and just look at the leaves. That concept is not there anymore. I mean, there's just so much to be done. So audiobooks has been another way that has helped me do a couple of things. So I can be hearing a book and reading another book. So I end up doing two different kinds of books. So if I'm hearing a genre which is maybe self-help, then I'm reading something which is, like a mystery or a fiction, which is drama. So that makes it interesting also.
And did you know that until the 19th century, I think a lot of people have forgotten this, until the 19th century, reading was not a solitary activity. It was an activity where a family would sit together and somebody would narrate a book. And it's actually not as sort of newfangled. It's a
that
very,
was
very
the
natural,
audio book at that time.
Exactly. It's a very, very natural activity, and it's lovely to see. I mean, I don't think of audiobooks as the dark side. I listen to them all the time.
Also, when, if you're reading it with someone, you're hearing it with someone.
That's
one
a lovely
headphone
thing.
and one headphone. It's lovely. It's lovely to do that.
Okay, who's next? This gentleman over here. The person who's wearing a Hogwarts t-shirt. So obviously a Harry Potter fan.
Yes. My name is Bhavik. I'm a bookstagrammer and have been a part of your club since last year. I wanted to ask, have you planned out your further books suggestions that for...
So not really books in that sense, because sometimes you look at a book and you feel, I want to read it just now, and then you want to put that on, and you kind of put the rest on hold. So I do have an idea where I might be heading, but there are times when I just go with the feel, because I feel like reading it at that point of time. I think the book we have on the book club right now was one of those. It's not a very new book, but I discovered it recently, Mossad, the book is. And I was at the airport and I found the book and I was just hooked and I wanted to read it right there. So I said, you know what, here it is. I want to read it just now, so I'm putting it on the book club. But having said that, I do want to explore more genres, and that doesn't necessarily mean I want to read all of them. So I do have a plan which I will roll out in the coming months, where we will explore many more genres and do a lot more with the book club, because there are various there's so many people and the community has been growing. So I do want to cater to a lot more tastes also. It's not so much of just me and myself anymore. I do want to cater to a larger audience now.
Have you thought about the some books that can aware the readers, or kind of just for fun reading?
Everything is just for fun reading.
If you're not having fun, then we don't want to read it.
Yes, absolutely.
It's fun to weep. It's fun to laugh. You have to be able to feel. That's the fun.
I think on that very, very inspiring note, which is that here's somebody, as I said, who can embrace life. And I think that if you embrace, one of the lovely things about reading is you can embrace through a book every experience in life. If not through one book, then through the next. It's a lovely way. They're training wheels for life in a way, you know. And so with that, I want to thank Sonali for being here with us. And it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you and to meet you. And thank you for
I have a request for you.
Of course. What can we do?
Because considering that we are an online community, I do want to share this with my book club. Can we do a selfie with you and me and the audience?
Absolutely, I'd love that.
Yeah?
We'll
So
have
for
to
the
ask
book
the
club.
audience, are you okay with that?
Let's give a very, very warm round of applause to Sonali Bendre Behl and Meru Gokhale. We'll do a quick media photo opportunity. Once again, please join me in thanking Sonali Bendre Behl and Meru Gokhale for that wonderful session, a celebration on the value of reading. And that session was brought to you by UFO Movies. We'll quickly go into another session here at the Nexa front lawn. It's a book launch. The book title is Nava-e Sarosh, Voices from Beyond, by Sanjeev Saraf, appearing in conversation with Pervez Alam. The anthology contains 65 ghazals by 10 Urdu classic poets from Delhi. That book will be launched in just a few minutes. We'll do a quick turnaround on stage. Please do stay with us for the book launch in a few minutes. Thank you. Oh, and I'll just remind you, actually, while I have your attention, we do have music and dance on for 3 nights of the festival. That's tonight, tomorrow, and the night after at Hotel Clark's Amir. There's music and dance. Tickets are individually sold either at the venue itself, at Hotel Clark's Amir, or you can buy it at the circular fountain here at the entrance to Diggy. Please do come and join us for more festivity this evening. Music and dance at Hotel Clark's Amir for the Jaipur music stage.
What inspires you?
Purity in creation. Introducing XL6. Next.